What's up, guys? So as promised, Airlift WirelessOne EZ onboard compressor going on the TRD Pro here to match the Airlift bags that we just put on the other day. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. It's here on the channel. Completely eliminates the squat, and the ride quality is still excellent in my opinion with those Airlift bags. This thing is awesome. We had it on the last truck. I'm going to show you how to get it done. Basically allows you to adjust the pressure in the bags on the fly using a remote that comes with it or an app on your phone. Definitely worth it in my opinion. Let's jump right into the install. Here's a look at everything that comes in the box. You have your compressor itself, of course, your air filter, a couple replacement filters that go inside the canister here. If you ever need to change them, you have a nozzle that's going to screw on the back there, which I'll show you, of course. Paperwork, wiring harness to go to power, 2 different lengths of air hose, all of your hardware. That big silver piece is the mounting bracket we're going to need, and then your remote. All right, let me show you where we're going to mount this thing. We definitely have options on this truck, but I'll show you what we're going to do with ours. Before we mount it on the truck, let me do a couple things to get it ready for install, just to make our lives easier. So all we're going to do is take the filter housing, this piece here. There is a filter already in it. If you ever need to change the filter, you can pop the cap off and put one of the replacements in there. All right, so all we're going to do is we're going to take our little hose fitting, looks like that, turn it around, and we're just going to screw this on the back. You don't have to go crazy, just make it nice and snug, finger tight. You don't even have to take a wrench to it, honestly. So just snug it up there. And then take the smaller of the 2 airlines, this end is this longer piece and the shorter piece. Take the shorter piece and just pop it on the back. Don't trim this or anything just yet, and I'll show you why once we get up underneath the truck. So just push it down on there until it's completely seated up against the back of the piece that we screwed on there. Set this aside. We're done with that for right now. Next, we're going to take a look at our compressor and our manifold. When you're mounting this thing, if you choose to do the location I'm going to show you, obviously you're going to see how we're going to mount it, but if you go with a different location, the only 2 things that you cannot do, you see the Airlift logo here on the front of the manifold. You cannot mount it with that facing down, or you cannot mount it with, you can see the wiring connection right there. You cannot mount it with that facing down. So this way and that way, those are the only 2 orientations that you cannot mount this thing. All right, ours is actually going to be positioned like this with the hose and the wiring harness coming up. So what we want to do, we want to take the red wire that's coming off of, you have a red and a black coming off of the compressor. The red coming off the compressor, we're going to connect, if you grab your wiring harness that looks like this, you can see there's 4 different wires coming off the back of it. There's a black, a plain red, a pink, and then a red with the white stripe. The red with the white stripe is the shortest one. You can see they already have it trimmed here. That's how it comes out of the box. We're going to take that red wire with the white stripe, connect it to the red wire off of the compressor using one of the supplied butt connectors. So I'm just going to bare some wire here. I'm going to cut off that spade connector there, make this connection, and we'll go on to the next step. Connection's made. Red wire with the white stripe to the red wire coming off of the compressor. And you can see I also, not only did I use the weatherproof butt connector they send, but I also used a piece of heat shrink tubing over that. This is going to be exposed to the elements, so you don't necessarily have to use that heat shrink tubing. I did just for an extra step of protection. Now we're just going to take our plug it into the only location that it can go. Just pop it on there, push it down, and you'll feel a little click, and you'll also hear it. Probably didn't show up on camera because it's very minimal, but you'll hear it and feel it. And then if you look in there, right there, there's a red tab on the side of the plug. Just go ahead and push that over, and that basically locks the plug into place, and that way it can't come loose on you up under the truck. One other thing I want to point out that we are not going to use, and you'll see why, but they do send these little Christmas tree zip tie pieces. So basically what they're for is, you can see on each side of the mount, there's 3 holes, 1, 2, 3. There's also 3 on the other side. Basically, they send you 3 of these, and if you're mounting this in a location where you want to secure the wiring to the side of the bracket like that, all you can do is take these 3 Christmas tree mounts, pop them in those holes, and then you can use, I don't know if it's going to show up, but they're slotted. So you can slide a zip tie through and secure the wiring to the side of the bracket. We're not going to use those, and you'll understand why once we get up under the truck. Let's get this thing mounted. So all we're going to need to do this is the U-bolt right here. We're going to need the 2 bigger bolts. You're looking at all the hardware that comes in the kit right here. You can see you get 2 shorter, 2 longer, 4 washers, a self-tapper, the 2 nylon locking nuts. The self-tapper we're not going to use. Basically what that's for is the black wire that's coming off of the compressor. We need to ground that to the frame. I'm going to show you a spot where you can do this without using the self-tapper, but if you needed to drill into the frame and use that, that's how you would ground the compressor to the frame of the truck. We're going to set that aside. We're not going to need it. All we are going to need right now is we're going to need 2 of the washers, 1 of the shorter bolts, the 2 bigger bolts, the 2 nylon locking nuts, the U-bolt, and the compressor itself. All right, if you guys saw where I mounted this thing on the last truck, on the 2020 Platinum, we actually had it in the bed of the truck, and I loved that location. It was out of the elements underneath my tonneau cover. It was an awesome location. I went back and forth on doing that again. It worked out perfectly, but this time I am going to do it, you know, how the instructions call for it. We're going to mount it to the frame on the passenger side, and just so you know where we're at when we're up underneath the truck, basically we're underneath the rear passenger door. And you can also use this big black bundle of wiring for reference. It's the only one underneath here, so just so you know where exactly we're dealing with. So what we're going to do, we're going to take the U-bolt and we're going to feed it up on the inside of the frame. Now there are some, when you're doing this, I'll get a picture and put it on your screen for you. You have to do this in a specific location, and you'll see what I mean when you're up underneath the truck. Up on top of the frame, up here, there are some, there's lines of some sort. I'm not going to lie, I'm not even sure what they go to, but there is a location right here where you can get this U-bolt, and there's nothing being pinched between the U-bolt and the top of the frame. Okay, so the top of the frame and the U-bolt is clear right here. Just when you're doing this, be careful that you don't put the U-bolt on top of these cables or lines. Again, I'm not even sure where they go to. I'm not going to lie to you. I just know they're there. So when you're doing this, just make sure the U-bolt clears them and you don't pinch anything between that and the frame. All right, once we have that in position, I'm going to slide it all the way to the right here, and then you're actually going to hit those lines that I'm talking about. So that's where I'm going to put the U-bolt. Then we're just going to take our compressor, and there's holes in the back of the mount for the compressor that you're going to line up with the U-bolt. So let me just get that lined up. So there you can see the U-bolt pops out right there. And while you're holding this in place, I'm going to try to do this without getting my arm in the way, but I also don't want to drop this on my face. So what we're going to do is take one of the washers and one of the nylon locking nuts that I showed you. You're just going to do washer, nylon locking nut, and just get it started. Do that for the top and the bottom of the U-bolt. Go ahead and tighten these 2 down with a 9/16 inch ratchet. All right, now we just have to take that black wire that's coming out of the compressor and we need to ground it. Now, the reason I said we didn't need that self-tapping screw, if you mount your compressor and manifold in this location, right to the side of it, right here, I'll put a picture on your screen, that's a threaded hole right there. And the smaller, one of the smaller bolts that Airlift sends you in the kit will actually screw directly into that. So all we're going to do is we're going to take some sandpaper and we're going to rough that up right around there to get a good contact to the frame. I used 80 grit just so you know what I used there as far as sandpaper goes. So then we're just going to take the smaller bolt that they send, that Airlift sends, pop it through the connection there. And I'm just going to kind of get it started with my fingers. And then it's going to be a 13mm ratchet is what you're going to need to tighten this down. So I got my 13mm here. So we're just going to actually tighten it as much as I can with the fingers. And then take your 13 and tighten it down all the way. Now grab your filter assembly. And you can see it has a Christmas tree on the top of it right there. What you can do if you choose this mounting location is right here, there's actually a hole already in the truck. So we're going to take it and we're going to pop that Christmas tree up into that spot. And you can see it's a nice secure location. Once you push it all the way up in there, it's not going to pop out of there on you. So then we'll come down, take our airline cutters. If you don't have a set of these, I use these in my airbag video as well. I highly recommend getting it. It just makes sure you get a nice clean square cut on your hose. So we can go ahead and measure out the length we're going to need, because we're going to connect it to the bottom of the compressor right here. So just measure out your length. You don't want any sharp bends or anything in it, of course. Once you have it trimmed off, we're just going to go ahead and make our connection right there to the compressor. You want to push it all the way on, all the way up to the top. Let me show you where we moved the filter to. Even though that felt like a perfect location to do it, I just wasn't comfortable for a couple different reasons. Number one, the obvious, it's going to be exposed to the elements. The instructions do say that you want that in a dry location, so that just wasn't all that smart to put it there. So anyway, the other reason being is you are technically supposed to mount it in a certain orientation. So let me show you that real quick. So what we did, obviously we now have it coming down of the compressor, and the airline coming over, following the frame, and we zip tied it right there to that big bundle of wiring. We went up and over that bundle of wiring. That way it's not hanging down and you can't really see it. And then if you follow the truck back, so where we are right now, this right here is, we're underneath the bed of the truck. That's the cab of the truck. So if you look up on the inside of that panel on the bed, there's a hole there. It's already there from the factory. You cannot miss it. And it just so happens that the Christmas tree on basically that mounting pin pops right in that hole. It fits snug. It's nice and secure, just as secure as it was in the other spot. Now you can see it's completely protected from the elements. It's not going to get splashed. It's not going to get wet. And the orientation that it's supposed to be mounted in is like this, with the nozzle facing down and the face of the filter, or the front of the filter, facing up. That's technically what the instructions call for. So I'm just much more comfortable with it being like this as opposed to where we had it, even though that was just a nice convenient spot. This is just as easy, honestly. I didn't see that hole at first, but this is definitely a much better option. I would highly recommend going to this spot versus the one underneath the truck. Okay, so it became very apparent very quickly that I was not going to be able to record while I was running the wiring. I just did not have enough room underneath the truck, and I didn't have a third hand to hold the camera. So let me show you what I did. It's very easy. I just could not record while I was doing it. So you have the wiring harness coming off the top of the compressor. And what I did, I used one of them zip ties. I'll put a picture on the screen, but it's those zip ties that actually, there was a hole right there in the truck. It'll actually pop in that hole, and then it has the zip tie built into it. So I did use wire loom. You can see right here, I have wire loom going all the way across. So you may want to obviously do that before you run the wiring. But then I shot it. You can see where we're at right here. Here's our air filter. If you go up and over the frame, just on the other side of this piece here, let me show you. We're going to sneak, don't mind the frame real quick. We're going to sneak underneath the truck here. Okay, so when you're up underneath the truck, this piece right here, what I did was, again, it's in wire loom, but I ran it. The wiring is actually, this is hollow on the back side of it. There's some lines in there. I just ran the wiring from the compressor all the way across. You can literally go all the way across to the driver's side. You can see, hopefully, I'm going to try to get you the best angle I can, but there's this channel that'll keep the wiring from the compressor up and out of the way from anything moving and from anything hot, obviously your exhaust. And where it pops out, so it's this piece right here. Again, the wiring is tucked up, and you can see right, let me see if I can move it right here. There it is right there. Okay. So then we just brought it over the driver's side of the frame. And here it is right here. This is the wiring from my tonneau cover. If you watch that video, you know exactly what that is. And where we entered the truck is that grommet right there. The same grommet that we used for the tonneau cover. Okay, you can't miss it once you get up. This is basically, when you pop up through that grommet, you could actually remove this grommet. It'll come right out of the truck, you can see. And then how you get the wiring in the truck from right there, let's pull you up here. Actually, let me get out from underneath the truck and I'll show you how you get into the truck from that hole right there. When you pop up through that grommet is actually underneath the driver's seat. So here you can see the wiring right here. We have our red, black, and our pink. Now right here, now guys, this is obviously for the hybrid, because if you have a hybrid, you know that our battery in these Tundras is underneath the rear seat. Basically right now, you're running this wiring to your battery. Okay, if you have a standard version that is not a hybrid, obviously your battery is going to be underneath your hood, so you need to be running this wiring up underneath your hood. Okay, so right here on our hybrids, what you need to do is the pink wire, separate it from itself and keep the pink wire up here in the front. Okay, I'll show you why. The red and the black, all you're going to do, obviously we just remove this door sill panel here. It just pops up. It's only held in by a couple clips. The red and the black, you're going to take a wire fish or something, just nothing sharp, because there's wires underneath here. You're basically just going to feed them underneath here, and it's going to pop out right here in the back. So same thing, we just popped up the door sill cover, just pops right up, only held in by clips. So you can see our red and pink, or I'm sorry, our red and black, not pink, our red and black coming over. You can feed it up through there. And here's our battery in the hybrids. You can see the red and black is right here. We have not connected them to the battery yet because we're going to do the air lines first before we make our final connections. But that's how I have the wiring ran so far. And that pink wire we'll get back to in a little bit. I'll show you what we're going to do with that. Let's run the air lines to the bags and we will wrap this up. So all you can see, we're back here at the compressor. And all I did was I took the longer piece of air hose that Airlift supplies for you, and we just popped one end into the gold fitting that I guess it would be on the bottom, but there's only one gold fitting. So just pop the air line one end into there, and you're going to put it, like push it in there nice and tight. And then when you're done, just give it a little tug, make sure it is gripped, and it's not going to go anywhere on you. And then all we're going to do to run it, you can see we're just following the frame. We're going to zip tie and everything, of course, when we're all done. But I went up and over this piece here, and I made sure it was nice and protected from anything moving. And then let me show you where it pops out once you go up and over that spot there. When you come in underneath the rear wheel well, you'll see where it pops out down there. Okay, and basically what I'm doing is I'm just following existing wiring or cables just to make sure it's out of the way of anything moving. So I'm going to zip tie it up here. You can see obviously there's the rear shock. I'm going to zip tie it right there, and then I'll show you how we're going to make our T connections and run them to the bag. Okay, at this point you're going to do one of two things. Option one is take one of your T's, your airline T's that come in the kit, and you're going to take your line that's coming from your compressor that I just showed you. I just zip tied it in a couple spots. That's up to you, wherever you want to zip tie it to. Just make sure it's away from anything moving. So we can take that line and put it into the bottom of the T right there. And then basically just take two pieces of hose, one on each side. One goes to the passenger side bag, the other goes over to the driver side bag. Now doing it that way, you're going to lose the ability to manually fill the bags if the compressor ever dies. And the reason I'm pointing this out is that actually did happen on my last truck. If you've been around the channel, you know, because I actually showed how to fix the compressor. But anyway, I want to keep the ability to manually fill my bags as well, just because if my compressor ever dies on me again, until I get it fixed, I will be able to manually inflate them. All right, so in order to do that, what I'm going to do, we're going to take the first T, and let me measure out the length, and I'm going to make my cut, and then I'll show you what we're going to do from there. So I'm just going to get the correct length from the hose coming from the compressor, and I'll explain what I'm doing after that. All right, so I trimmed my line coming off the compressor to the length that I want. I did it right here because I'm going to be able to hide my first T behind this module, so you won't be able to see it. So all I did was I took the air line coming from the compressor, and I went to the bottom of the T, like I mentioned. Now what I did was I cut my line from the line that went from my driver's side bag up to the valve. I cut that, and I'm just going to basically pop this into one side of the T. And again, you want to push it in there nice and snug. You'll feel it kind of pop through the grip. And then what we're going to do And actually, I could probably trim that a little bit, but I'll do that afterwards. I just want to show you just so you get the idea of what we're doing. Now what we're going to do in order to have it the way I want it, where I could manually inflate or use the compressor, we're going to take another piece of spare hose this is the extra hose that we cut. I'm going to cut a piece, or I'm going to put one end into the other side of this first T. Same thing, push it in till you feel it kind of pop. Give them nice little tugs. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to tuck that behind there to hide it. I'm going to take this, run it to a second T that they do supply, and I'm just going to measure out the exact amount that I want before I actually hook it into the T. So this first T, you have the compressor line going into the bottom. Off one side, we're going over the driver's side bag. Off the other side, this is the extra piece that we're going to cut to length. All right, guys, so this is proving a little tough to get on camera while I'm actually doing this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw a diagram, put it on the screen real quick. If you need it, pause the video and it'll explain exactly how these are ran, just so there's no confusion. But here, I'm going to show it to you anyway in the video. So you can see my first T right there. You see our line comes over behind the module, of course, goes into the bottom of the T like I showed you. Then out this side, that's my line that comes up and over to my driver's side bag. Out the other side that you can see back in there, that line shoots, I ran it back behind this brace here, and you can see it right here. Right there by the where my finger's moving. This is my passenger bag, okay? So my passenger bag and that line coming off the other side of my first T goes back behind this section of the wheel well, and I'll give you a quick look at that. We'll power the wiring up and we're all done. All right, so you can see we're now behind the wheel well, and here are the two lines that I just showed you. The one from my passenger bag and the other one that's coming off the other side of the first T. You're gonna bring them both back. Here's our second T. So one of those two lines is gonna go into one side of the T. The other is gonna go into the other side of the T. Then the base of the T shoots up to my valve. And I'll see, maybe I'll go up top and give you a look. But if you look up in there, hopefully you can see, basically there's only one air line going up to my valves now. The other valve on the right side of your screen, you can see them hopefully right up there where I'm pointing. The one valve is just disconnected now. I just cut that air line off. Then this line here that I'm shaking, that's coming off the base of the T up to that other valve. Okay, so that's how you would manually fill now if your compressor ever breaks. So here you can see what I'm talking about. This is where we put our Schrader valves when we did the bag install. And if you look at the rear, now you can see that I just basically cut that air hose off. That was going to my driver's side bag. And then we left that one intact. So now if I ever need to manual fill, this valve is dead, but I can just hook up to this valve here and manually fill them if I need to, or deflate them for that matter. All right, let's make our wiring connections. So the positive, they do supply an inline fuse holder. Now make sure the fuse is not in there yet. As you can see, it's empty. Comes with a 15 amp fuse. So we're simply just gonna strip back a little bit of wire. Strip back a little bit off one end of the fuse. So before we go any further, if you're wondering why I'm leaving myself so much extra, we're going to connect direct to the battery terminals for right now. But as you can see, we are going to be running a switch panel just to keep this nice and neat in here. Even though it's hidden underneath the rear seat, I still want it nice and neat so my OCD does not go crazy. All right, positive, a little bit trimmed off. One end of the fuse holder, a little bit trimmed off. So we're just going to take our supplied butt connector that they do give you and clamp it down. We'll get a little heat on that just to shrink it down. Trim a tiny bit off the other end of the fuse holder. Take one of the supplied rings that they give you. Pop that on that end and tighten it down. Make sure it's nice and tight. Then just come over to the negative. Same thing, we're just going to trim a little bit off. Put the other supplied ring terminal on that side. Positive and negative connections are made. Again, fuse is still not in. Let's go up to that pink wire and I'll show you what that's for. So here's why we had to separate the pink wire from the red and black. So the red and black ran back like we showed you before. The pink, we have to run up the front. And you have to remove your kick panel, which that's very simple to do. It's just held on by, there's a little thumb screw that you unscrew and it'll pop right out, just held in by a couple clips. And then you're gonna run it up to, there's a grommet right back in. Let me get that out of the way there. You can see there's the grommet right there that I poked through. And that's gonna pop it out up in the engine bay, which I'll go around and show you now. Okay, so you can see where it's gonna pop out. You can see that grommet down in there. And let me show you where we're gonna hook it into and what exactly it does. So what I've done is I connected the pink wire to an ATA fuse with the weatherproof butt connector and some heat shrink tubing just to give it some extra protection because it's gonna be up here under the hood. This step is not mandatory. You do not have to use this pink wire. If you don't use it, just either trim it and tuck the end, just make sure it's secure, tuck it under a panel or whatever you want to do with it. But again, you don't have to do this step. If you use this pink wire, what it allows you to do, it's basically like an ignition wake-up wire. What that means is as soon as you turn the ignition on in your truck, it wakes the compressor up and the compressor will sense the bags, see if, let's say the truck was sitting outside in the cold for a while and your bags lost a little bit of pressure or, you know, whatever the case may be. The compressor wakes up, senses the bags, and makes adjustments as needed. You don't have to do anything. It does it on its own. You don't even have to think about it. If you don't connect this pink wire, you just don't get that functionality. Basically, the compressor won't wake up unless you either wake it up with your phone app or your wireless remote, or if the vehicle starts moving, the compressor will wake up and sense the bags and make adjustments. All right, so not everybody's going to care about this feature, obviously, but I personally like the fact that, you know, knowing that as soon as I turn my ignition on, the compressor wakes up, senses the bags, I don't even have to think about it, makes the adjustments, we're good to go. So if you're unfamiliar with an ATA fuse, basically, I'll put a picture on your screen. It allows you to add a circuit to an existing fuse. So all we're going to do is, it has two open slots on it, as you saw in the picture that I just put on the screen. So all we're going to do is find a 10 amp fuse in the truck that is an ignition fuse. I've already identified it. I'll put another picture on your screen showing you which one we're removing and going to use. When we take this 10 amp fuse out of the truck, it's going to go in the bottom spot of the ATA fuse. It's the spot that does not have a wire coming off the side of it. Okay, so remove the 10 amp fuse from the truck, put it in that bottom spot. Then you're going to need another 10 amp fuse, which it's separate fuse. You have to either, if you have one at the house or you have to buy one, you're going to put the additional fuse in the top slot that has the wire coming off of the side of it. Okay, once you do that, and just so you know, this ATA fuse and obviously the extra fuse, these do not come with the kit because this is an optional step. If you want to do this step, you are going to have to purchase these extra pieces. I'll put a direct link down below to the ATA fuse because you have to make sure you get the right one. These Tundras use the mini fuses. Okay, but just so you know, these do not come in the kit. Once we have the two 10 amp fuses in the ATA fuse, we're going to take the bottom of the ATA fuse and put it back into the factory slot where we removed the fuse from. All right, so just go ahead and push it down in there, make that connection, make sure it's in there good and tight, and then I'm just going to feed my wiring over this way. And I took the cover of the fuse box and I just notched out a little section right there with my Dremel. Okay, put this down here, make sure the wiring is coming right out that side, that slot that I made, pop it down into place, and that's actually perfect, a perfect fit. That's nice and tight. So now the pink wire is connected, good to go. All we have left to do is go put our the main fuse in, connect it to the app and to the wireless remote, and we're ready to rock. All right, so we're going to take our 15 amp fuse that does come with the kit. We're going to pop it in the main slot there. Take your remote and pull that tab out. Press any button on the remote. Oops, we had it upside down there. and you're going to get a screen that says scanning devices. Hopefully you can see there number 1. You're only going to get one device showing up unless for some reason you have more than one compressor. So all we're going to do is press the number 1. It's going to say pairing. When I say number 1, just the button with the 1 dot on it. You'll get a thing that says pairing successful, and now we can make sure the compressor's working. So what we'll do, let's try blowing the bags up. Maybe we'll put it up to, let's go to 15 and see what happens. All right, so it's that simple, okay? I don't know if you saw down in the right-hand corner, there's an up arrow telling you that the bags are inflating. When you, let's go back down to maybe 10, you'll see a down arrow letting you know that it's deflating. And I'm sure you could hear the air coming out there. All right, so now you are you're paired to the remote to store presets. Very simple. My first preset, I'm just gonna, whoops, sorry, I screwed that up. Hang on one second. Okay, so my first preset, I'm gonna put my first one at maybe 8. And I'll adjust this as I go as needed. So once we're at 8, we're gonna press and hold the number 1. And you'll say preset 1, it'll say preset 1 saved, and you'll see a P1 down in the corner. Number 2, when I'm running my boat, I think I had it at 15 if I'm not mistaken. Whoops. Sorry, I'm all screwed up here. I'm hitting the wrong button there. So we'll go up to 15. And then the button with the 2 white dots, we'll press and hold that. Preset 2 saved. It says preset 2 right there. And for number 3, because you can have 3 presets, I'm just going to go to 22. To save number 3, you're going to press and hold 1 and 2 together. Preset 3 saved. Okay. Again, you see the P3 down there. If you, let's say you want to go to your first one, just simply hit the first button. It'll go down to number 8, or I'm sorry, 8 PSI, where we saved our first slot. That simple to use the remote. Let's take a look at the app and we'll wrap it up. So to pair the app, we have to remove the fuse. It says wait 5 seconds and then reinstall. And that's going to put your manifold back into pairing mode. And then you're going to want to make sure you have the WirelessOne app, which looks like that right there. Click on that. Go to, I've already had this, that's why it's saying reconnected from my old compressor. So we're going to go to settings, devices, and there it is right there. This is the new one. Click on that. You get a thing that says enable pairing. Click on OK. Bluetooth pairing request. Click pair. And it says we are now connected. So let's go to the main screen here. All right, perfect. So here we are. I changed my presets to 7, 12, and 22. So you can see we're at 7, preset number 1. Let's say we want to go to our preset number 2 down here. Just click on that and tap again to apply. You can hear the compressor kick in. And you could also see at the top, when it's going up or down, it'll actually tell you the pressure at the top of the screen. Now you could also name these. So what I'm going to do is click on the gear, and let's get rid of that. And we're going to just name this, I'm just going to name it stock, because that's probably where I'll run them most of the time. I might even just deflate them all the way, since these are the, have the internal jounts. So now you can see down here, it says stock. Okay, so you do the same thing for the other 2. You can name them. 22 is going to be my boat. I'm sorry, not my boat. 22 is going to be like a heavy duty if I'm hauling like family vacation stuff. Like if we're on vacation, the truck is loaded down, have the boat hooked up. And then that middle one, right now I just have it at 12, but I'll probably put that at around 15 or 18 for when I'm towing the boat. All right, so there you go. That's how you pair up the app. It's that easy. And you could also deflate or inflate using those red arrows as well. Last step you want to take is blow your bags up to anywhere between 40 and 60 PSI. Take some soapy water mixture and spray it directly onto your connections, anywhere your airline connects to a valve. So on top of each bag, your T connections, all those locations. Spray with some soapy water mix. Check for any signs of any leaks. You'll see little bubbles forming if you do have any kind of an air leak. If you don't see any bubbles forming, you're good to go. Install's complete. There you have it. It's that easy to install the WirelessOne onboard compressor. Definitely recommend this thing. I had it on the 2020 Platinum, as I mentioned, and I love the fact that I could just open up my phone, go to the app, or use the remote and adjust those bags as needed depending on what I'm towing, hauling, whatever. You could even do it on the fly. You're driving down the highway, the ride feels too stiff, too soft, whatever. Pop the button and hit the button, and the bags will inflate or deflate as needed. So definitely recommend this thing. I love it. All right, if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, as always, put them down below. We'll get them addressed for you. Thanks for watching, and we will see you on the next one. Take care.